Start right. We promise to start right at 12 o'clock. So grab some tea, grab some water, get a comfy chair, stand up fast if you will, and we'll get started in just a few moments. So happy to see all of you on the call today. All right, we are ready to get started. Welcome, welcome. You are in the right spot if you are here for the 12 o'clock Eastern Time Food for Thought webinar. My name is Stacy Fritz, and I'm going to be your moderator today. And we have a very special guest that I want to make sure is on our call. So before we get started, like I said, please make sure you're super comfortable. And I am going to not shout out her name because I want to introduce her properly, but I want to make sure that she is with us. So if you just give me about 30 seconds, we'll be starting right on time. All righty. I think we're good to go. I'll let you know in just a moment. Again, my name is Stacy Fritz. Welcome, welcome to Food for Thought. Today we have a very special guest that I would like to do a proper warm up and welcome to. So, If you'll allow me just a couple of moments, I'd like to introduce you to Jen Nolan. She's going to be our oncology nutrition specialist today. I'm going to introduce her, and then I would also like to share with you a couple of housekeeping rules for today's webinar. It's been a couple of weeks since we've been together, and I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So today's webinar will be about 45 minutes. I'm going to introduce Jen Nolan, and like I said, I'll share a little housekeeping, and then we're going to do some really structured work together, sharing with you. The topic today is, what is the metabolic terrain? What is the metabolic terrain? So no prior knowledge needed before the topic. If you have a little bit, it's great, but if not, no worries. We're going to break it apart today. And then at the very end, what we're going to do is we're going to open it up to questions from you all. So our questions today are very pointed in that Jen and myself, we will not be answering, unfortunately, we won't be answering specific diagnosis questions about particular cases and whatnot. And the reason why there is a very specific reason is we're going to stay on topic today. But should you have those specific questions, at the end of today's webinar, I will guide you on how to get those questions answered. So without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce Jen Nolan. Jen Nolan is the lead oncology nutrition consultant and a Terrain certified network advocate for Remission Nutrition. We're so blessed and lucky to have her with us today. A little bit about Jen. She absolutely loves meeting her clients, her patients, on wherever they are on the journey, helping to create a foundation, and then starting from that foundation, getting to work on supporting the patient in their journey. Jen's specialty is food and how food harnesses, how to harness the power of food as medicine. The backbone of her approach includes whole food, hydration, sleep, movement, digestion, stress management, and then a big one for her is going deeper with emotional well-being. So important. As a side note, Jen is extraordinarily grateful for the opportunities that she has to work with her patients. She works with people all over the world, and it doesn't matter what phase or stage that person is. She enjoys working with everyone. So without further ado, I'm going like this, that Jen is with us, and she can say hello, and I can start sharing my screen. Jen. Oh my goodness. All right, just hang on one second and we will make sure we get Jen on the call.
Hi, Stacy, I'm here.
Yay, there you are. So Jen, I hope you heard me share all that incredible information, your background and what your passion is. Anything that I missed that you wanna add?
No, thank you so much for that introduction. Am I on video at all?
You are not on video, so we need to make sure
Okay.
that you are. So just have to turn on that video at the bottom of your screen, and let me go ahead and check and make sure.
Yeah, it's not giving me an option to, so sorry
Mhm.
about that.
No worries. Well, we'll get started and then I'll work on that. How's that sound?
Yeah, you bet. I guess one of my just quickie little comments is that as a oncology nutrition consultant, we do not use the language personally of patient. So I call everybody a client on my end. I know that at Believe Big, as patient advocates, use oh, here. Yeah, I can't get the video to turn on, so I don't know what's going on with that.
I'll work on it. Don't worry.
Okay, cool. Perfect. So yeah, so that would be my only thing to share. And it's just such an honor to be here. I'm not sure how many people are on the call, but I have, so much love for Believe Big and the organization and all of the amazing people that I get to work with through Believe Big. So it's really a blessing for me.
We're so excited to have you, and that makes sense. We work with clients all over the place and noted for sure. As I mentioned, while you're speaking, I'm going to work on getting the ability to pull you up on video because I would love for everybody to see you as well. So we're blessed to dive in, and we're going to do just that. So today's topic is what is the metabolic terrain? And Jen is going to guide our conversation. I do have a couple of questions that we are going to throw out there. And like I said before, we are allowing folks to jump in at the very end. But minimally, for the people that are on our call today, if they're not familiar with the terminology metabolic terrain, how might you best simply explain exactly what the metabolic terrain is for those of us who have no experience with that terminology?
Yeah, I would say the most simple way to explain the terrain would be I think of it as all of these sort of systems. I kind of liken it to what naturopathic doctors use in their systems approach. So there's all of these different systems in the body. We call it the garden often. So it's like the garden of the body. So with our work, we really work to maximize the health of the terrain or the garden of the body. And there's 10 different terrains that we talk about. And I know you have another slide, Stacey, that kind of lists the different terrains, but essentially what we're trying to do is utilize food to really make the terrain very healthy, the garden very healthy, so cancer doesn't have an opportunity to grow and flourish, basically. So we want to, just kind of clean up a little bit. And, for instance, if somebody had a lot of inflammation in their body, we're going to use foods to bring down inflammation. We know that cancer loves an inflammatory environment. So we want to shut that down as best we can. And there's so many powerful foods we can use to bring down inflammation. So like I said, there are 10 different metabolic terrains, and they kind of meld together a little bit too, but we certainly that's kind of what we do. So we make the
Great.
garden a happy.
Great explanation. Before we jump ahead, though, there is actually a very cool book that has been written on the topic. You did a great job in explaining exactly what it is, but for our listeners who are dialing in today, just know that, and we'll talk about this a little bit more at the end after Jen dives deeper on this terrain conversation, if you will, that there is a book that's actually been written by two very special people in both of our worlds, right? So Jess Kelly and Nasha Winters wrote a book about the terrain, right? The metabolic approach to cancer. And so I'm just showing you a picture, and we will follow all of this up with the great resources within this book and connection to Jen and her team. I just wanted to kind of level set the conversation and let you know that before she dives into those 10, that it's actually, completely put together for you in this book. So that said, I'm going to bump it forward here, and we're going to look and allow Jen to kind of guide us, a little 30,000 foot view of what exactly is included in the terrain 10. So this slide will kind of guide the conversation, but Jen may be jumping around a little bit and kind of can take it a little deeper for us.
Yeah, you bet. So, and the book is wonderful. It also is a pretty, I would say, hefty or heady book. It's amazing and it's a great resource. So when somebody, if somebody is either concerned about, maybe being at risk for a certain type of cancer or has been diagnosed, or a family member has been diagnosed, this is a really great resource. It is also on audio, and I have listened to it, and it's pretty well done. So that's another way to get people, to kind of get the information without having to read it. I also say that, you might read it once cover to cover, and then it's truly a resource guide. So we go through the different terrains, and there are, as I mentioned earlier, 10 of them. And again, some of them sort of meld together. So for instance, you'll notice that one of these is about the immune system. So we really want to utilize, again, food and other modalities to maximize the immune system. We know that a lot of the immune system lies in the gut. So you'll also know that terrain number 4 on here is all about gut health. And so, again, they kind of work hand in hand often. But if we start off, we look at, and Stacey, if I spend too much time in this area, just shut me down. But, we could talk about this for days and days, of course. So
100%. I would never shut you down. It's like riveting information. I love it. So you take us as deep as you like, and I'll pull us back around if we need to.
okay. Super. So basically, we kind of start this off actually, let me back up just for a second, because one of the things, and I know this is probably a question that we're going to talk about, but in the book, there is what's called a Terrain 10 quiz. And we go through each of these different categories with a ton of different questions. There's on our website, and we'll share this later, there is a quiz that's also digital. So that's really nice. And we've recently gotten together as a team and kind of updated some of the questions. But what this does is it helps us figure out basically where in the terrain we might want to focus. So if you take the quiz and you have a couple, say you have, two of them are really high points or score really high rather. That means that we're going to kind of jump into those terrains and focus. So I just wanted to say that really quickly, because it can get really overwhelming where you're like, oh my gosh, there's so many places to go with this. But in general, the Terrain 10, we look at genetics and we also look at epigenetics. And this is a really, pretty complicated area, but also can be very helpful and important. So I look at a lot of people's genetic reports from a nutrition standpoint. And really, again, I call it massaging our genes. So we use different food and different lifestyle practices to massage our genes. So our genetic picture is working better, or our epigenetics. Epigenetics basically just means the turning on of some of these potential issues that we might get from our genetics. So it's the expression of our genes. Then we go into blood sugar balance. And really, this is probably my favorite one, because it's the one that is so correlated with food and when we eat and how much we eat and what we eat. And so I love blood sugar balance. And I think that if we're you read the title of the book is The Metabolic Approach to Cancer. So if we're working on balancing our metabolism or our metabolic health, then we need to get our blood sugar balanced. And so we use, again, foods and lifestyle, different things to balance blood sugar and get people off of the blood sugar roller coaster. And that is a really common place that a lot of our clients are when they come to us. So we also go through toxicities. There's different tests we can check. We can do, it's almost like doing a household detox sometimes. So I love, Zoom is weird, but it's also great because I'm in people's houses with them and I'm able to cruise around. Sometimes they might be on the phone or the computer, and we're going through the cupboard sometimes and really looking at what toxic burden their body might be having. So that's a really important one. We also look at, again, I talked about gut health. There's so many things we can do with the digestive health. And oftentimes when people are undergoing certain treatments, different medications, their digestion gets pretty trashed. And so we are working on that nonstop. Immune system, what foods can we use to boost the immune system? There's tons. So thinking about foods that are rich in, vitamin C, vitamin D, things like that. We try as best we can to eat the rainbow. You've heard that term, I'm sure, before, and that's going to give us a lot of these micronutrients to help us build up the immune system. Mushrooms, PS, are a really amazing immune system modulator. So sometimes people might have an overactive immune system, as in like certain autoimmune disorders where their immune system is just working really on overdrive. And mushrooms can bring us back to the center a little bit where we're supposed to be. If someone has a really underactive immune system, they're getting sick all the time, things like that, or again, their microbiome is trash, then using mushrooms to boost the immune system can help. So it's a really favorite food of mine. We also want to make sure we work on inflammation and something called oxidative stress, which is something, again, I'm just going to keep saying it, food,
Right.
food. is really powerful. Circulation is also really important. I love this one because I always say, cancer really loves to be in a thick and sticky environment. So if we're not moving, if we're not eating things that can kind of help circulation, like turmeric powder, fatty fish, the omega-3s really help with circulation, and onions, garlic, leeks, spicy foods, things like that can really help with circulation and beyond movement of the body. We want to balance hormones, and there's all different kinds of things that we look at for that, as well as, and that does go back to the GI too. So we want to make sure the microbiome is working really well, and that can help balance hormones. We can talk a lot about, I can talk for days just about stress and biorhythms. So that means getting proper sleep, working on different stress management tactics. And last but not least, and probably my favorite terrain, is enhancing mental and emotional well-being. And there's so many things that, I think that a lot of the time I spend on calls with people is more about that than the food itself. So, Stacey, I hope that was helpful.
It was tremendously helpful. And just again, one of the great things about being able to provide these webinar information sessions is that we not only do we have the expertise of somebody like yourself, but in terms of my role in this is having family members and people that I love having gone through the cancering journey themselves, is kind of taking the information and really weeding out some of the heaviness of it. And I appreciated what you said, because I did read this book, and I would agree that it's a lot. It's a lot for someone, especially if they're newer to the journey. And what I appreciated about the book, even though it was heavy content, is the fact that there is a quiz that goes along with it, like you mentioned. So my question to you is, it's more of a restatement and asking for confirmation. It looks like a ton, Jen, like 10 things, and it's this feels like a bit of a heavy job to kind of get through the information. The way that the book is structured, and what I think you're saying is that we can pick, after taking the quiz, finding out a place where we can focus in one or two areas and break it down and kind of look a little deeper on areas that we might be able to clean up with the heavy importance on our nutrition, and how powerful, just like in your bio, that how powerful food is really as it relates to healing. Did I get that right? Spot on?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And the other thing I heard very clearly is the value and the importance of number 10, which is, in my opinion, a little easier to dive into than some of like the science behind and things like the toxic burden management and blood sugar balance and whatnot. Managing our emotions and finding tips, tools, and strategies to keep the body in balance and in check, and what I would say in a calmer state, it really has a very, very important role in somebody's healing. Correct?
Absolutely. Like I said, I think it's one of the most important terrains out there. I will say that I find that it's not the easiest one to tackle, because sometimes people can, we can look at, myself included, I can go look at these foods, and that's really tangible for me. I can be like, okay, I can follow those directions, and I can cut out sugar, and I can do all of these things. It's sometimes digging into the stuff, the mental, emotional part. It's challenging, it's hard, and it's scary. And so some people aren't there, and that's okay. So it's not like we have to shoot right there. Some people are just wide open, they're ready. Some people, it's not talked about for a while. There's some getting to know each other and feeling safe, because we do dig into some pretty deep stuff. And I always want people to feel comfortable and not forced. So, those are the people that are like, all right, let's figure out this food thing first. And that is all good.
Sure. I agree. And maybe it was a misstep in terms of easier. My suggestion was more about as it relates to it's the feeling part of the journey for sure. And I know you and I have connected separately. I'd love for you to, since number 10 is a clear passion of yours, and I have to say it's a clear passion of mine, could you give our listeners a couple of different strategy types that somebody that when you were working with somebody, what would be some of the things that we could work on in terms of mental and emotional well-being?
Yeah, you bet. One of my favorite things lately has been working on gratitude and really doing some form. I think it's important to have some sort of a ritual. And I've been working on this in my own life where maybe it's a morning ritual. I have a book that is a favorite of mine by Mark Nepo. I think he says it Nepo. And I read that. It's kind of like a passage out of that every day. Each day has a little passage attached to it and sort of a meditation. I tend to skip the meditation part and do my own. But then I try to do a tiny bit of journaling after. I, like everyone, am short with time, of course. But for me, it sets the stage for my day. If I have done some sort of a short meditation with a little bit of that reading, whatever it is for you, and a little bit of a journal where I might write, even if it's just simple. I did this yesterday morning. I just wrote simply 3 things that I have gratitude for. And it felt so good. So that's something that can be really helpful. This is one of my it's not a soapbox, but one of my favorite things. When I have somebody who comes to me who is in a very like obviously fearful place, they might be angry. They have a lot of emotions around this diagnosis and they call the treatment. And if there's anybody that knows me, they've maybe heard me say this, but they call the treatment poison or toxic.
Yeah.
Or they give a lot of that kind of negative energy. And we work hard on going, okay, how can we reframe that a little bit and talk about this as, I mean, I'm totally cheesy, but I'll be like, how about our, love or potion, healing potion or healing love potion or something like that. So we can go in with a more positive kind of feel instead of that negativity. So that really fits in well with this mental and emotional well-being, because once we can switch over to that more positive place, the whole body feels it. I do suggest some different meditation apps and things like that. Like I said, the journaling, and honestly, not letting this dietary piece turn into a big giant stressor, because I'm like, if it's going to add a bunch of stress, then it's not worth it. So how can we minimize the stress and the overwhelm that this can truly bring in? People, we're all already overwhelmed, right, with the diagnosis and a journey such as this, or if it's a family member. So we need to make sure that we're not just adding more stress to the mix.
100% agree, and we are in 100% alignment. I want to circle back on what you said earlier about what you're doing. I'll get the resource if it's okay from you of that Mark Nepo. I
Yeah.
think our listeners would enjoy. I tend to, same as you, I have limited time, but I am a huge advocate for gratitude, whether it's that 5-minute gratitude journal, but before the feet hit the ground in the morning, just taking a micro pause to find 1 to 3 things that you're grateful for, things that you're inviting in, setting the energy in a positive light. I remember when my brother was on his journey, one of the things that it was just like an intuitive thing that the words fighting my cancer or battling against my cancer, immediately the hair went up on my back, because I thought to myself, it's just such an aggressive and felt a little, tough. And maybe reframing, as you mentioned, as a way that I'm, as I'll join you in the cheese factor there, is that you're working with this diagnosis to heal the body in the places where the body has become out of balance, and figuring out a way to have a more loving approach to the journey, as opposed to this, heel dig and resistance and getting rid of and whatnot. It sounds like minutia, but it matters, in my opinion. And the energy that you bring to the healing, I think, is super important important as well, meeting people exactly where they are and then letting them unwrap the journey in their time, not necessarily forcing any one strategy. For me personally, the meditations are awesome, but I even would take it a step backwards and the power of the breath and teaching somebody how to breathe essentially a better breath. That's where my work is, outside of Believe Big, and really helping folks managing stress to stay more in alignment with a calmer, quieter approach to all things. Doesn't have to be somebody that's on the cancering journey. That stress is not good for any of us. So figuring out what works, and not throwing too many things in there, so then it kind of jacks up the stress. We want to find things that work for each particular person. So I love what you're doing, and I imagine there's a million other things that we could also do to enhance our mental and emotional well-being.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yes.
you're right. And I just had a really interesting client just a few minutes ago, before our call, and we were talking about this exact conversation. And he was like, he's pretty, set in his ways, let's just say. And I said, look, tell me where to meet you. And I said, because I know if I put out a bunch of things that are way in the left field, that it's not gonna hit. I knew it wasn't gonna hit with him. And I was like, and you're not gonna like me very much, and we're not gonna have a very, very successful time together. And he was like, all right. He was like, meet me in center field. I was
Yeah.
like, okay. And then we talked about all of the different kind of foundational things that we can do to, the guy's, he's pretty heavy, and he's drinking, I think, maybe 30 some ounces of water every day. And I was like, okay, here's a good starting point. Here's a foundation. So I just think it's so important that every single client that we work with has a totally different story,
It's true. So we're not leaving people hanging, because I remember this conversation many moons ago with the diagnosis, is that people do want to get started and want to put in place immediate things that will help. And I just want to circle back to your bio, and that how you approach creating this, let's call it a foundation, just as you mentioned, this basic layer of where we can get started and start up leveling our work together. But there are some key components that people can find in the book. But just to simplify it, that we will look at somebody's nutrition as it relates to whole foods versus processed, how they are hydrating the body, because there is newer updates on the amount of water that we should be taking in, and not everybody loves to drink water, right? And so that would be another place. How much sleep somebody was getting, the active movement, I will call that like incidental movement. Is somebody sedentary? Are they sitting there all day long, or they have periods where they're actively have movement in their day to day? And then even going deeper, the digestion, and then the stress, and then, like as we just talked about for a few minutes, that's mental and emotional well-being. So I guess where I'm going with it is that all of us have many different places that we could auto-correct, or refine our skill set in finding healthier ways to live our daily life. But I love this approach, because it allows somebody to pick the one that maybe feels a little gentler for them, and it might be different for every single person. So I'd like to transition us to the fact that at the next slide that I'm going to show, and if people are interested in purchasing this book, and or working with you or somebody on your team, ways that we can kind of connect those two. And so what I'll say is that if you go on to the Remission Nutrition site, you guys can get started right away to see where you are on this Terrain 10, because there is a link, and I'll show you in just a moment. I actually put it on the last slide, and I will put it in the chat, that you can click on that link and take the Terrain 10 quiz online, even if you don't have the book just yet. So that would be one place to start. And then the second, I'll answer the question before it comes in. If somebody is interested in working with somebody like yourself, Jen, at Remission Nutrition, what would be a good way for us to connect somebody with you beyond that initial email? They would do what to be able to work with somebody on your team?
Yeah, you bet. So we have right now we have three amazing consultants at Remission Nutrition, and we have a really great way. People can email into us. It's just info@remissionnutrition.com. That would be on the website as well, just to contact us. And then what we do is we typically do an initial consultation, which is 2 hours. It's pretty intense. But it goes by often very quickly, I will say. We do a lot of our intake prior. So part of our intake process is it's almost like the terrain quiz a little bit. Like we're looking at the intake and we're kind of determining prior to the visit what terrains kind of rise to the top and where to start. But I guess to answer your question, going to the website is the best way. You can learn about each of the consultants. All the bios are there. And then if you have further questions, please reach out to our office. And Anna is there to help out. Carrie and Anna, we're kind of transitioning right now. And Carrie is going into a consulting role, but really well equipped to answer a lot of the deeper questions. And then you would just set up an appointment for an initial consultation. We do offer some packages too, where there's a little bit of a savings, which would be multiple visits. I never just like to meet with somebody once. Of course, I understand that, it's a financial piece. It's a lot of time, but I always hope at least I can have one follow-up session, and those typically are an hour. So we go through so much in these visits, and every single one, like I said, is different. So
Yeah, that's really good to know. So, and again, just so our listeners know, if you haven't been connected to the Believe Big team, one of the very first emails that we send out about some general resources includes Remission Nutrition link in there, and then we also offer the opportunity if someone is working with Remission Nutrition that they can apply for a wellness grant to offset some of that cost as well. One of the things that I really appreciated about working with Remission Nutrition with my family members was the fact that there is a direct connection to looking at the numbers and the blood work that is associated and the recommendations that were coming in to confirm that yes, in fact, we were on the track towards what we were hoping for, the numbers being in the healthier range and whatnot. So it's not just like let's just guess and apply a general strategy. It's very specific to the person that is getting the consultation with the nutritionist. So super important. And I might add, not all nutritionists are educated in the same way. And I want to be super clear from my end is that if you are somebody that's on this journey, it can look different for you than it would look for somebody else that would be on a different journey. Even if somebody's just trying to clean up their nutrition in general, you want to be working with somebody who has the skill set, the knowledge, and the experience to be working with specific diagnosis. And there are many different ones under this umbrella. So super important that we're not just picking things. I know that this isn't anybody on the call, but everybody's a nutritionist these days, and we want to be super careful about the recommendations that we are getting when we're trying to heal. Do you want to add anything to that, Jen, or did I cover that?
I think, yeah, you covered that really well. And I would just add that, the word bio-individualized is a word we often use. So everybody's very different. And when I went through, the program, the Oncology Nutrition Institute program, which is Jess Kelly, our founder's, oncology nutrition program, one of the slides that probably struck me the most, because my background years ago was in dietetics and food science, and it was so different, obviously. But one of the best slides was this. It was a graph, and it had three different, say, women of the same age, same cancer diagnosis, same a lot of things. And depending on like the lab work or the terrain, whatever terrain imbalances were found, everybody's treatment was different. And when I say treatment, I shouldn't use that word. The approach was different for every one of them. And that to me just blew me out of the water. I was like, oh my gosh, okay, I get it. It just was like all the light bulbs turned on. It isn't a standard protocol for every person because they're this age and they have this same diagnosis. So we don't treat cancer, we treat the terrain. We maximize, again, the health of the terrain with different modalities. And regardless of the type of cancer, everybody's terrain is likely very different.
I agree. I 100% agree. And just to simplify that very big point is the fact that when you are approaching the terrain, we're getting into the root of the why, right? Whereas if we're looking at it like you just mentioned, we're not treating cancer is that, and I'm not suggesting, that this occurs, but at the same time, if we don't get to the origin and try to figure out how to balance the internal terrain, then we may be looking at other things, down the road, which is, again, I just think that approaching it from a terrain perspective makes just a whole lot of sense. That bringing the body back into balance. All right, so I feel like I could talk to you all day long, Jen. You and I are geeking out over here. I'm so sad that and I will share with you the why on the video. We'll make amends on that at a later
I think
date.
I know why. Yeah.
Same time, I'm just sad because I would love for our listeners to see your beautiful face while you're speaking. But we have a few moments, like 10, that I would love, if it's okay with you. I like to call it the hot seat, but it won't be. And allow our listeners to ask any questions that they might have. I do have one that came in, and here's the rules for everyone. We're going to put Jen on the hot seat with any question that you might have. Reminder that we're not answering specific diagnosis questions, number one. And number two, if it's a heady question, meaning that it would take more than, like, say, a minute and a half to answer, I'm going to jump in and I'm going to say we will answer that separately, and we will send you an email the best we can with that answer. Does that sound fair?
Great.
Cool. All right, Jen, first question that came in a bit ago is, and I'm interested in hearing this answer. Why, the question is, why is coffee bad for you when you've been diagnosed with cancer? I'm just reading you the question the way it came in, so you can answer it whatever way you like.
Yeah. And I actually would say that for everyone, I don't think, first of all, I don't like to label things good or bad unless it's McDonald's. That's what I always say. Don't tell them myself. But I don't think that coffee is necessarily bad for us. I think that it depends on the person. We do use, again, genetics to look at. So some people have certain genetic potential issues where their body might not metabolize caffeine very quickly. And so that can actually mess with it's a big, long, huge story, but it can mess with some other parts of the puzzle in terms of even hormone balance. So a little bit careful with coffee sometimes. I think that it's very individual. And I do think that making sure the quality is huge, is very good with coffee. So that's one thing. It's like people drink coffee every day and they forget that, oh, wait, that coffee could be heavily sprayed with pesticides, things like that. So making sure, I'm even taking it further and going to make sure it's been certified mold free. Also think about the way the coffee is made. Are you using filtered water? And are you putting it through a bleached filter or through those lovely little Keurig things that are terrible for the environment and go through heated plastic and aluminum and all of that jazz? So, it's not for everyone. And I wouldn't say blanket statement, coffee is bad for you if you've had a cancer diagnosis.
Excellent answer. I'm just because I'm asking, this is for me. What's your favorite brand of coffee? Do you have one, or kind of coffee? I think I know, but
Well, I drink Four Sigmatic coffee because it has less caffeine in it. I tend to be a little bit zippy with caffeine, so I'm really careful with too much. It has a little bit of caffeine. It's all really high quality. I don't like how wasteful the packets are. I'm not going to lie, but they have coffee beans too. I don't use those because it's too much caffeine for me. I use the powder, and it's mushrooms. So I figure that's good for me too.
Good answer. Good answer. Okay. Lots of questions coming in, so I'm going to go kind of fast.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. What's your personal favorite snack recipe, Jen?
Oh, okay. So I don't do a lot of snacking because I'm really all about eating fewer times during the day to balance blood sugar. However, if I need a snack, I love to take a half of an avocado. I take a
Mm.
little bit of, I love purple kraut. It doesn't always have to be purple, but I love kraut or kimchi. And I put salt, maybe some turmeric, pepper, and some olive oil. And then I just have this little bundle of goodness in a bowl. So that's what I eat.
Sounds yum. That sounds yum. I might have to get that recipe from you. All right, next one. Um, is coconut oil good or bad for you? And in parentheses, the listener said because of the saturated fat. What's your position on coconut oil?
I feel like I'm a broken record with this answer. It depends on the person. So we definitely look at, again, genetics, and we look at lab work to see how it might be impacting. So some people might have trouble with some coconut products. Typically MCT8,
Mm,
the eight only is better if we find that coconut products are an issue. So I think that variety is the key with any of this. So,
yeah,
not going overboard. Don't drink 10 cups of coffee in a day.
yeah.
Don't have only coconut oil as your fat. Use it sometimes, use other oils sometimes, mix it up. So, variety is hugely important.
Good answer. Great answer. Okay, so this is a great question, I think. Chris would like to know why is it so hard, in your opinion, to get Western medicine to pay attention to the terrain? That's a loaded question, but that's a really good question. They're all good questions, but that one kind of hit me a little.
Yeah, it hits me too, especially with, like I said, a background in dietetics and food science, where I left that program pretty crushed. I'm not going to lie. So I would say I don't know why it's so difficult. I think it's more, I mean, we could get really political and I'm not going to, but I do think that there's just a unknown. People don't know, they weren't trained in nutrition, and there's not a lot of, research done in nutrition either. Um, I don't know. I guess we were talking about the question was about the whole terrain, and that's just not what they do. That's what naturopathic doctors do. And this is a good plug to enlist, if you can do it, a metabolically trained naturopathic oncologist, somebody who knows how to work on the terrain, and recognizing that this isn't an alternative approach, this is an integrative approach. So we have Western medicine doing what they know and doing what they do, and oftentimes doing what they do really well.
Agreed.
And let's put in some integrative, it's like building your team out. Make sure you've got that naturopathic influence in as well that can kind of cover that, because doctors, they can't know it all,
That's true.
right?
Well,
So
and as part of our mission at Believe Big is bridging the gap to your point and in defense of there's a place for all of us. And it is, as you mentioned, the terrain is very different for every single person. And you want the best people on your team that can approach your particular situation with the best possible tools. So if we're taking this Western approach or we're taking this complementary or alternative, we're not saying this one is better or this one's better. We're saying, can we all get in the same playground and work it out for the person? And I would agree. There's an argument for all of us, and our Western folks, there's there is a lot of talent and study and we all can't be a specialist in each of the areas. So super important. And I think, Chris, great question. It's the plug for build out your team and make sure you have somebody on there that does know the stuff, because I believe it's like the one of the biggest missing puzzle pieces, right?
yeah.
Okay, so this next question is coming in from a couple of different listeners, Jen. So it's asked in all different ways, but essentially the question is about the keto diet. And so the original question was, is the keto diet the only nutrition program that you recommend for your clients? And then the back half of the next couple of questions that came in is, the question is it a blanket recommendation? Or are we building plans based on the individual, or is keto always recommended?
I love that a bunch of people ask this question because I get this a lot. I
Yes.
would say absolutely not. We do not ever do a blanket plan. Or a blanket recommendation. I think that people often read, the metabolic approach to cancer, and they think, oh, they're just going to do a keto no matter what. And that is not the case. So we definitely, I would say the common thread with all of our plans will be a very metabolic approach type of diet. And what that means is that it's going to be a lower carbohydrate diet often. And that is important because we want to bring down, we can use a lower carbohydrate diet, even a Mediterranean style lower carb diet, to really help improve the terrains. We can hit on all of the terrains by using this lower carb diet often.
Mhm.
So no, the answer is no, we don't just use keto. There are certain types of cancers, maybe, and if the person is up for it, such as glioblastoma, that's like, there's a lot of research that shows that can be very impactful. And if people are game, then let's do it.
Mm,
But everybody's different. And,
yeah.
we have a lot of people with autoimmune, we have a lot of people with major GI stuff, it just depends.
Yeah, it does. And that's a really hard answer for somebody who's looking for additional answers. Is it the term or the sentence, and it just depends. That's hard to hear because that's not what we necessarily want to hear. We want to hear the strategy. So
Yeah.
I appreciate
Well,
that.
and the strategy comes from the visits and from the intake and from the lab work. And I would far rather, yes, we want those answers and we want them quickly, but wouldn't you rather have somebody that's going to actually look at, it goes back to the question that was answered before.
Yeah.
We don't want that. We're asking for something different. And that's what I feel like I want to help people understand and help provide. And you know what? Some people are like, no way, I'm not doing that. I'm going to support anybody, no matter what, but I'm going to encourage them to work towards, obviously a much more metabolically friendly diet.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. All right, just we have a couple more moments, and unfortunately, I think your hot seat questions are about to get hotter. So feel free to answer. Just to say, Stacey, we'll answer that offline there. But I do want to make sure everybody feels seen, heard, and addressed in terms of their question. Next question is: gluten seems to always be addressed as a bad thing. The question is, do you take a softer approach on sporadic use of gluten for those of us not living with a gluten sensitivity at all? So what's the approach about gluten?
Well, gluten's a tricky one. I'm guessing that a lot of people do have some gluten sensitivity that they might not even be aware of. So
Yeah.
this goes back to me meeting people where they are. If they're like, this is an NO, I'm not going to take that out and I'll have it once a week or twice a week, then I'm not the boss, right?
Yeah.
However, I feel that a lot of, and even grains in general, can be pretty high in omega-6 fats.
Yeah.
And so if I have somebody who's got a lot of, say, GI issues, that has a lot of inflammation, we know this from the intake, from the different tests, then that can be something that be taken out. It doesn't always have to be forever, you guys. Right? We do use this therapeutic approach for a number of months or something like that. It's not like, oh, this is it forever, right? But we can take down inflammation by taking out grains, and we can take down the carbohydrates. So, it's a tricky one. I am very aware that that's a hard thing to take out of the diet. But there's so many different replacements out there that we can use that are healthy replacements, not the junk that we might find at the grocery, but healthy replacements to make us feel like we're still getting those
Yeah.
gluten-y foods. Gluten-y? I don't think that's a word.
Gluteny. That's a new one. That's a new
Yeah.
word. That you just
Yep.
made that up. I'm just,
Yep.
yeah. Okay, last one, and this is a tough one, Jen. I'm not going to lie. I'll be curious to see how you approach this question because I I have heard this question before, directed, elsewhere. And so the question is that if someone believes that they have done quote unquote all the things and addressed the terrain, and unfortunately, the information or the test results yield that the cancer has progressed. How I'm not even sure how to ask that question. Do you find that you get people? Have you had that question asked of you before? Is that somebody has done as recommended, and unfortunately, the um, the numbers are trending in the wrong direction. How
Of
do you
course.
how do you address that with somebody?
Yeah, I would say a few things. One, I think setting up expectations that, first of all, our work, we would never say, a dietary plan is a cure for cancer.
Right.
Okay. So this again, it goes back to integration. We're here to help. And if it's say it's treatment, to use this sort of dietary approach to help with side effect management or help even the efficacy of certain treatments, right? So if someone feels that they have done everything, then I mean, I don't know that we've done everything. Like, is there more to unpeel? Are there more places to dig?
Yeah.
I think that oof, it is a tough one. I mean, I want to work in conjunction with the team. So that is something that I really like to do is have a really nice relationship if people are willing, if they have, especially a naturopathic doctor that I can work with together. And that's where that advocacy comes in, where I can be like digging in with them, like what are we missing, what else, is there something else, is there a mental emotional component, maybe there's some trauma that's not been able to be sort of released or worked through. I feel like, yeah, I mean, of course that's a conversation that I've had.
Yeah, I just
And
didn't. I didn't want to miss the opportunity to share the question. I go figure. As just as I anticipated, our listeners have lots more questions for you, Jen. And I'm gonna truly, I'll be the bad guy here today, and just say that we're going to end fairly on time. I kept you a couple extra minutes than we promised everybody. I will make sure that the questions are sent to you. I just want to. Round it up by saying, for those folks who maybe came in a couple of minutes late, this is being recorded. This webinar is being recorded, as all the other webinars for Food for Thought have been, and the links and the playback recordings are actually on the Believe Big site. That's www.believebig.org. My name is Stacy Fritz. I am a patient advocate for Believe Big. You can reach me at stacy@believebig.org. You can ask me anything. I'll point you in the right direction. And I will make sure in our show notes that we have the info at Remission Nutrition contact so that anybody who is interested can reach out directly. And finally, the last thing is I will make sure that that quiz link is in our show notes as well, that you can kind of get a direct route to kind of taking a look at the Terrain 10. I cannot thank you enough, Jen. I knew it was going to be amazing, but the listeners proved that as the questions are still coming in. And we just scraped the surface because, again, the book is available. It is when I say a bigger book, it's got a lot of heady content in there. If you need help breaking that down, to our listeners, where all of us are on standby and the patient advocate team to kind of point you in the right direction. And you now have a direct route to Remission Nutrition. Thank you, Jen Nolan. I am going to wink, wink, nudge, nudge, beg for you to come back on another topic with us. And for our listeners, I usually can convince if I do my job. But anyway, I so appreciate your time, Jen. And for our listeners, I appreciate you. I really am very thankful. We had almost 50 on our webinar today, which is outstanding. And I know that there's many more that benefit post webinar that listened back. So, in gratitude, I'm giving my gratitude journal a little bump again this afternoon for Jen Nolan because she is a wealth of information. I think we need to do a part two, maybe, Jen. So, because we never did get to our Reiki conversation
I
and deeper on
know.
that emotional. So, more on that to come, you guys. And I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. We're praying for you. We are here for you, and I really look forward to our next food for thought. Mwah.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. Talk soon.